So we have 2 awesome events in June, and here's the thing. We know that you want to come, but you just can't bring yourself to push that click here, right? That little RSVP thing, that little I know, it's like such an emotionally taxing task to go to the calendar and click the RSVP button, but we need your help. If you're coming, we want to have you. Make sure to RSVP. We want to know to expect you. Hope you enjoy the podcast. I'm Rabbi Patrick, and welcome to Kehila. All right, friends, we are going to talk about conversion because that's actually the most popular episode I've ever done in this whole podcast situation. Now, part of it is not just that people here in Kehila land are interested in the topic. We have a lot of Jews by choice. People are considering converting. And then also it's just like an interesting topic. It's an interesting social topic. But also, if you look at the map of all of the different places where people listen to this podcast, I mean, it ain't all like, Chesterfield County, Richmond, Henrico, whatever. It's all over the world. So to those of you who are listening to this all around the world, A, thank you very much. B, I'd like to ask for a gift. I know it's a little weird to ask for a gift, but in order for our very physical, tangible, in-person, human being congregation to support things like this podcast, we're going to need your help too. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm never going to move to Virginia, right? Or I'm never going to visit Richmond or whatever, but there's something about this podcast that resonates with you. You're one of these like hundreds of people who's listened to this conversion episode, right? Maybe you picked us up from that. I'm just asking for you to open your heart a little bit and maybe give a gift, something just to support what we're doing. And to know that even if you physically aren't present, you still belong. You join the email list, you get the spiritual wisdom, you get the podcast, all these things. You can be, in some sense, a member from afar. So while the average Kehila podcast episode gets a fairly nice number of people here in Richmond, Henrico, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's all of you out there throughout the rest of the entire world who I'm speaking to right at this moment. Please know that there are these people in Richmond, Virginia, and in Chesterfield County who are connected to you now, and that we need your help. If you like this podcast, if you like the emails, I know you don't get to come to the events, but if you like at least this much, open your heart and become part of us through a gift of any size. It would really mean a lot. So lots of interest in this topic of conversion, but then it occurred to me a few days ago, and it's been something I've been thinking about for a long time, that when we talk about conversion, we do it in this very academic way, right? It's like, what class do you take? What movement do you belong to? It's a very brainy, heady, thinky thing. And then we dump people into these social situations, right? Because here's the thing, Judaism's like a religion of people, right? It's hard to be a Jew in a cave somewhere meditating by yourself, right? Purim is not that interesting in solitary confinement, right? And yet how all of us in our Jewish journey tend to start, and it's not everybody, but it's a lot of people, is by like picking up a book at a bookstore or a library, or reading a bunch of things online, or following a bunch of Instagram influencers. It's all brainy, thinky, processing stuff. And look, I think I'm a fairly intelligent human being. I read, like, I went to college, went to rabbinical school, like, yeah, like I get it. But also that moment you walk into a Shabbat service for the first time, that kind of queasy feeling you get when you open a Siddur, and it's not something that you're, studying over a cup of coffee. It's something that you're reading aloud with other human beings. That first Hanukkah party, and am I lighting the candles correctly? And they're all looking at me, right? That stuff. I want to talk about that. And I want to express a belief that I have, that the older I get, the more I believe. And that is that Judaism is not a religion, at least not by a Western standard. And that's part of why we have as much anti-Semitism as we have. And it's part of why also people are very attracted to becoming Jewish. It's just that we don't necessarily have a great way of doing that, I think, on a physical, in person, local level, because there's a lot of things that you miss out on. And we probably should completely rethink Derech Torah like curriculum. Just as a concept, we should probably completely rethink it because, in my experience, well, okay, I'm going, but I haven't set our covenant. So, let's do that before I, keep going on this thing. So, maybe I need to set my intentions here, right? What's the old joke? It's like the cobbler's wife has no shoes, and I guess I'm the cobbler's wife who has no spiritual shoes right this second. So I found this. This is a humanistic version of the Shema, which I thought was interesting. The way it's formatted, I don't know if I'm doing this correctly or not. Hopefully, we'll all get to the same place. This is a humanistic Shema and declaration of interdependence by Machar, the Washington Congregation for Secular Humanistic Judaism. So, on listening and oneness, al shmiya ve'achdut. Bavakasha, Shema, Shemi, Shmana, Shimu. Hear, O Israel, please hear, O tribes, dispersed and estranged. Let the tale of Abraham inspire us to transcend today's idols and lies. Let us heed diverse voices and visions, seeking understanding and unity. O children of Abraham, O inheritors of this world, please hear one another. Please hearken to each living being. The earth, our world, is one. All peoples, all beings are one. Cool. So, think about that for a minute. The interdependence and the wonder of all things. Everything's a relationship in the universe. I say that all the time. Everything is a relationship, and that's why you matter. Okay, so just a couple of fairly recent, like the past 6 months kinds of revelations that the way that we teach Judaism, and it's because okay, let me back up. Sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained today. So I get these emails like, hey, Rabbi, I'm interested in converting. Here's all the books I've read. Okay. Hey, Rabbi, I'm really interested in conversion. Can we meet? And then we meet, and then they want to know, where is the class? Where is the book? What's the website? What's the podcast I'm supposed to listen to? What time do I show up to the Zoom meeting? Right? And then I'm like, well, why don't you come for Shabbat dinner? And it's like I've said something insane. The thing is that, and I think maybe we need to start this thing, which is just to say, repeat after me, converting to Judaism is not joining a religion. Converting to Judaism is not joining a religion, or at least it's more than joining a religion. Judaism is a peoplehood, and becoming Jewish is about being brought into that peoplehood. And the peoplehood certainly knows how to people, don't we? And I think this is what throws people off a little bit sometimes. I think that, you study and you learn and you pray and you're taking a Hebrew class and you're whatever and but then what are the unspoken rules of the Kiddush lunch, right? What are some words in Yiddish that you might hear every once in a while? Why does this group of Jewish people and this group of Jewish people somehow not get along very well? Why is there this preoccupation with Israel, both from a very right wing and a very left wing sort of way? It's all these little things that people don't necessarily know about. And the one that I sort of relate to the most is the person who has been studying from this very traditional perspective, let's say. And then they go the classical Reform synagogue and they're totally lost. It's the person who decides to wear tzitzit right before they convert. And they're going around and hanging out with Reconstructionists. And they're completely thrown off. They're but I've been studying Judaism, and why aren't we doing Judaism? And how come everything feels Jewish but doesn't feel like Judaism, right? And again, it's because we do such a horrible job of teaching people about Judaism as a Jewish peoplehood. And this is true, I think, of everybody, by the way. We all start in on, okay, it's the three-part series of God, Torah, Israel, and then we do like the language series, and then we do the history series, and blah 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 blah. We teach people a bunch of things that a lot of born Jews don't know, and then we say, okay, when is Splish Splash Day? When are you going to get circumcised, et cetera, right? And there are, again, all of these just kind of unspoken things that we don't even think to talk to people about. And I think this is the stuff that throws people off. So this episode is a bit of a rambling. I don't have a lot of notes here, but I just wanted to kind of speak to some of this stuff. Like, what are the things, if you're that person who maybe when I said the thing about, everything's Jewish, but nothing feels like Judaism, like if something about that clicked for you, if you feel like you go into these rooms, these spaces, and just like nothing is what you learned about in Derech Torah class or Judaism 101 or whatever your class was called, okay, this is for you, right? And maybe if you're someone that doesn't have that part of their story, maybe you'll listen to some of this and you'll go, oh, like I never realized that's why we do that. Or, oh yeah, I had a relative who did that or acted that way. Oh, okay. Or wow, I can see how maybe I've done things that would throw off someone who's new to Judaism. Or maybe you're someone who was raised Jewish and you're like, but I don't know any of this, right? We didn't go to synagogue. We didn't participate in all these different things. So of course I wouldn't know. That's why I get so confused about, right, exactly. So this one's for you. In no order of importance, a bunch of random ideas. So the first one is, what do born Jews think about conversion? And the thing about it is, you might be a little bit surprised. The first thing I want to say is that everybody is their own person, right? Like everybody has their own beliefs, values, orientations, whatever. So there is kind of no omnibus belief that people who are born Jewish would have about people who convert. But some of the ways that I've seen people act might surprise you. So the first thing is people who are shocked by the very idea that you would want to become Jewish. Like that just like conceptually they can't handle it. And the dynamic that happens there is you're a person who wants to become Jewish and you're being hit with this sort of like brick wall of, but why would you want to do that? Right. And then you start thinking about, oh, but I read this book that said they're supposed to turn me away 3 times and yada, yada, yada. Okay. Nah, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. Somebody's great Aunt Esther is not on the bait den. You're fine. Relax. Calm down. This is a person for whom the Jewish narrative has always been one of disaster. So why would you want to join a group that is oppressed? Why would you want to join a group that is marginalized? And then let's flip the script there. If you're a person who is attracted to that, are you someone who is going to weaponize that, for lack of a better word, marginalized identity in a way that boosts you? In other words, do you have a bit of a victim complex, right? Are you someone who feels like a victim and you're looking for an identity that will allow you to be a victim? So those are the kind of fears that some people instantly have when it comes to people who are interested in becoming Jewish. The second part that they maybe struggle with is they've always thought of being Jewish as a familial concept. So they'll say, well, oh, so like maybe you're like Jewish on your father's side, you've got to do a halakhic thing by converting. Or maybe you found out that your grandma was a Holocaust survivor and now you're trying to reclaim it. Okay, that I can get, right? And you're like, no, I was raised like a Methodist in Wisconsin and like I just want to become Jewish, right? Again, it just doesn't make sense to them. Right? Because if being Jewish is ethnic, if it's cultural, if it's about a family and a history, and particularly a dark history, but a survivalist history, again, why would you want that? And so that's where some of these people kind of hit the wall with you. And that's where you're going to get very defensive very quickly. And you don't have to. It's just that it's an unrelatable concept for them, right? You think of trying to explain to someone what being LGBT is like, right? How would you even begin to explain that to someone who has no concept of human sexuality, maybe, right? Like it's that kind of a thing. It's just like, how would you even begin to find that, find a relatable way of speaking about that? And so with those people, first of all, it's not your job to like explain all that stuff to them. Also, and here's the other thing, and some people do this and you really shouldn't, don't try to hide it. Don't try to sneak in and sort of like if someone says, "Oh, like whatever, Smith, not a very Jewish last name." Don't go, well, I might have I did 23 and me and I think I'm like 0.08% Jewish. Like no. You don't have to start saying words like bubby in order to like cheat your way in. Like that's not you're not sneaking into a nightclub, guys, right? Like it's just not. And I get it because the frame of reference for that person, Great Aunt Esther, hopefully no one has a great Aunt Esther who I'm throwing under the bus here. But like, I get that that moment is tense and stressful. Also, it's not. She's just a lady who wants to understand why you want to do something that people have chosen to assimilate out of, right? Um, it's the same type of question. Why would you choose to, climb a mountain, right? When so many people fall off of them, right? That is how this prototypical person is thinking. So you just smile your way through it and you move on. Okay, so that's one kind of person. Another kind of person you're going to meet is someone who is all for it. They're like, "Oh, great, you're a wonderful person. Welcome to the tribe, Mazal Tov," right? That. And, maybe they don't care how you joined or what process, whatever. So that may be one person. There's another kind of person who says, "Okay, great. Well, where is your halakhically certified Beit Din? Right? Who is your rabbi who is going to teach you Shulchan Aruch? Because that's what Judaism is." Now, you're going to have a similar type of feeling with that person as you would like Great Aunt Esther. Okay. So that this person, you're going to think, "Oh, you're just so judgmental and you think Judaism is just this one thing," right? All that stuff. Okay. Calm down, relax, deep breath. Here's what's actually going on here. This is a person who's very open. They would love it if you became part of the community, of the peoplehood. They feel like we need as many friends as we can get. However, by you being interested in becoming Jewish, you are accepting what the peoplehood does and the foundational ideas of the peoplehood and the, people and process behind Jewish life. And so if you say those things, but then you decide, "Well, but I don't want this part of it. Well, but I don't agree with that part of it." You're kind of telling the tribe, like, terms and conditions apply, and it's my terms and conditions, not yours. Now, that may be fine. We live in a secular Western democracy. You can always go and study somewhere else and be part of a different kind of Jewish community or whatever. You can always go from one community to another, right? So maybe you started off in like a Reform community and then you found Chabad and you want to be Orthodox. Great. You can do that in a secular Western democracy. That is entirely possible. You just have to understand that the person who feels like you need to convert a certain way, that you need to do a certain thing with a certain people, what they are gatekeeping is the idea of whether you actually want to be part of the Jewish peoplehood or if you want to get something out of it. So it's ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, right? If you want to be part of this family, understand who we are and what we do. And if you understand who we are and what we do, listen, please, we'd love to have you. But don't come into the peoplehood with your checklist of things that you refuse. Because what does that say? It's almost like you imagine hiring someone to come work at a job, and in the interview process, they say, "Okay, well, the job description says this, this, and this, but I'm going to do this, this, and that. And if you don't allow me in, I'm going to talk to your HR department." Right? That's what for this kind of person, right? In this story that I'm telling you, that is what it feels like. So what do you do with that? So first of all, maybe you say thank you. Like, "Hey, thanks for your thoughts. Like, thank you for being welcoming." And then say, "Hey, I'm on a journey. And so I'm learning and you've just helped me learn. Thank you." And then you walk away. So you got to do. Okay. So there's that. Now, what about the overly enthusiastic, like Juvangelical person who's like, "Oh gosh, let's bring you in. And then you'll do this and then you'll do that." And you get super pumped. But then like maybe you're socially overwhelmed. So I had someone say this to me once and it has just stuck in my brain. She wanted to borrow a bunch of books from me. So I gave her the books. And then I said, "Well, and we've got a this thing and a this thing. You can come to this thing." And she said, "I don't want my spiritual journey to be an endless series of social engagements. And I thought, woo, okay, there you go. Talk about like, that last story about the guy who's like, you need to convert this way and a similar kind of moment, right? And this was years ago. I don't know what this person's up to, what they're doing. But I don't think that Judaism ended up being right for them, right? They're just sort of a seeker. I think that her dad was Jewish, but she wasn't raised in anything. I think that was kind of the story there. So she did her thing and she moved on. And that's okay, right? That's all it had to be. So, if you're that person who's like the cheerleader, the den mom, you want to just like have everybody become Jewish, like, okay, I love you. I love that you are interested in helping this person who's interested in converting. Also, let's not completely overwhelm them, right? Let them come to us. It's okay. So that's just a couple of little things there, just to give some frame of reference about this idea of joining the peoplehood. Conversion is probably the worst word for it. Adoption might actually be a better word for it because you're becoming part of the family, right? When you get a Hebrew name, you choose parental names. And so those things are incredibly important. Do you sit Shiva for your non Jewish parents? And the answer is you're not obligated to because on that piece of paper, your Jewish parents are Abraham and Sarah. Now, of course, incorporate any rituals you want, right, as part of the process of mourning your loved ones. Like, of course, obviously. But remember now that you've joined a peoplehood, and that peoplehood has a particular structure and a particular way of being. And this is all to say that Jews who were born Jewish, their frame of reference for what is Jewish is going to impact how they think about that with you. Okay, so um, here's the thing: you take the class, right? The Derech Torah, the Judaism 101. They teach you about the calendar and all these other things, and at some point, y'all have to stand and sing Hatikva or whatever. But there are these unspoken cultural norms of Jewish life that exist outside of halacha, that exist outside of history, because every group has a way of being that isn't expressly taught, right? So I'm just thinking about, my house, for example. So you come to my home, and one of the things you'll notice is that we have all of our shoes sort of off to the side, right? God, it's an enormous pile of shoes. And we have a shoe organizer, right? Isn't that great? Like you have the shoe organizer, and yet shoes are spilling out like lava flowing out of a volcano. So that's the thing. Um, so immediately you're like, so do I take off my shoes? I guess I do. Well, sometimes people don't take off their shoes if like it's just one person. So like side note, if you're doing coffee with the rabbi and you come into the house and it's just you and I, my shoes are going to be off because I just don't like wearing shoes. But if you keep your shoes on, it's not the end of the world. Now that's an unspoken rule, right? When large groups of people are in the house, you take off your shoes. When it's just you, you have the freedom of choice of what you want to do because it's not like some cultural ritual thing. It's I'm lazy and don't want to mop my floor. Okay. So that's like an unspoken concept, right? Um, let's maybe think of some other sorts of versions of this, right? Things that we do that are cultural in nature, that are normative, but like have nothing to do with Jewish law. So, one thing I'm immediately thinking of that is part of this is how you talk about the Jewish New Year. Is it high holidays or is it high holy days? Now, remember, holiday is a contraction of holy and day. Listen to it, holiday, holy day, right? So is it high holidays or high holy days? What you call it is just going to be a matter of like whatever Jewish group you belong to. I remember one time I actually got into a conversation with someone about this. We were trying to figure out like some advertising for the Jewish New Year. And I said, let's call it high holidays. They were like, no, 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 we are calling it high holy days. And I had to explain to them like it's the same thing, but high holy day sounds to a person different than high holidays because most people call it high holidays, not high holy days. Okay. Is there a difference? No. Is there a religious difference? No. It's just a matter of me in that moment trying to explain from like an advertising perspective that a person who's thrown off by the word holy might prefer to see it as holiday, right? Again, so dumb, but like, why do we call it high holy days or high holidays, right? It's just a matter of a cultural difference. Why is it a kippah or a yarmulke, right? Most people in America say yarmulke. That's Yiddish. Why not kippah? It's Hebrew. Our like culture is Ashka normative, right? That's why we use the term yarmulke instead of kippah. Okay. Now, granted, like certain people, like younger people, will gravitate towards kippah. But I mean, but like, okay, these are just like these little cultural things that no one teaches you, and they're not the biggest deal. But it's just these norms. It's just these unusual little norms. Okay. Um, and I think it's fair. Like you go into these Jewish spaces and you don't know, like, why is it that when you go into a Jewish space and you show up 15 minutes late, you're somehow 15 minutes early? Right? It's just these like things like people do. And it's these unspoken cultural norms. Like, if an event starts at 7 and you show up at 6:50, yeah, like nothing's gotten going, right? Because it's not yet 7. And if you show up right at 7, yeah, you're probably going to be one of the first people who walks in. Now, if you show up at 7:30, well, sorry, the thing's already kicked off. So I'm sure that for certain people, like these kinds of things might drive them nuts. I remember one time I was asked to do a lecture about Passover at a church. And so the pastor who asked me to come, right, we're doing a PowerPoint, all that. And I said to him, well, what time does the event start? And he said, well, the event we agreed is at 7. So that means it's at 7. And I said, yeah, but like, when are we actually kicking it off? And he said, well, at 7. And it's like, oh, okay, because like a German, Dutch, Lutheran understanding of time is a little different than like a Jewish American sense of time, right? So that's, the number of times, and I feel so bad for people. They come to something, it's like at 6 or whatever, they show up at 6:01 and they're like, am I the first person here? Well, you're not, because I'm here. So like, you're not the first. You're never going to be the first person there because I'm always there, right? But then also like, yeah, like I feel it. It's because of this weird Jewish thing of showing up late. Like it is what it is. So again, these unspoken cultural things that I know just drive people nuts, but it is what it is. And we don't talk about this stuff in these classes. Now, here's another thing we don't talk about, and I think maybe this has gotten a little bit better. I think there's been some improvement here, is when you convert to Judaism and you become part of like a synagogue life, you don't know about all of the things that surround that are non-synagogue, but are part of the Jewish world. So like, what is a Jewish federation? What is a JCC? What is Hillel? What is Birthright? What are all of these Israel-aligned organizations? And like, what is any of that supposed to mean for me? So I think that most of us can understand like what a JCC is, right? Because we can think of like a YMCA, right? Or a church gym. And most of us can think of like what Hillel is. Oh, it's like the Jewish Student Union. Okay, well, I can get that. But like federation sounds like something from Star Trek, right? And then you try to explain what it is, and it sounds almost like a conspiracy. It's like, well, it's this large umbrella organization that fundraises and distributes money as part of aid to the Jewish community. And it's like, oh, so it's like GoFundMe, but Jewish? And it's like, no, there actually is such a thing. It's called charity, but like, anyway, no, it's like this bigger organization, and they do a lot of different work in communities, and they're very boots on the ground, as well as being focused on the financial fundraising, whatever type stuff. But there's things that, if you're a person who's new to Judaism and you see that, you sort of are like, well, wait, so is this like a club that only rich people can join? Or like, am I welcomed? Whatever. And the answer is you are. Like, just you are. But again, like not something we put in the class. And then birthright, like explaining the concept of birthright to people. Like, here are these subsidized trips to go to Israel, and it's for like, Jewish young people. Although they do all these like older adult ones too. Yeah, this is another one of those sort of things. Like there's no parallel to that in other things, other groups, like whatever. Also, I have found that the way that we are oriented as a Jewish community is really based on this idea of supporting the young, and just an assumption that younger people have less money than older people do. And so there's always this kind of sliding scale of age as opposed to a sliding scale of income. And I've made the argument for years now that different types of Jewish communities, nonprofits, whatever, need to get away from this whole like, well, for young singles, you get a discount. Well, for young Jewish professionals, you get a, yeah. Right. But there are young Jewish professionals who work for consulting firms in DC who make more money than like someone who, let's say, sold insurance for 40 years. Right. So this whole idea of like the sliding scale of age, that's something that kind of frustrates me because it's a class issue as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, but that's another one of these things, right? Like this idea of really prioritizing young, like things for kids, things for young adults, right? And then this sort of assumption that when you get older, you join the synagogue. So this is like after you've had a family, like you've done the bar mitzvah and the whatever, and then you quit, and then sometime in your 60s you come back because you need purpose, and you get involved at the JCC, you get involved at the synagogue, you get involved in federation, you get involved in some seniors group or whatever. This kind of life cycle Jewish nonprofit thing, right? Again, not something we talk about in Derech Torah. But it matters. And what does it matter for Jews by choice? This is something that you belong to. This is something that you can access. And that matters a lot, I think. Now, two more things, completely unrelated. First, I want to talk about an idea called rent a bubby. So my friend Mitch Cohen, when he got his master's of Jewish studies, he had to work on his thesis. And so he wanted to talk about converts. And the reason why he wanted to talk about converts is he found out he had an aunt that converted to Judaism. And so he did this study, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't quote anything from it, whatever. But he talked about how people like his aunt never felt like they ever truly kind of assimilated. Like they never felt like they truly belonged. And times have changed a lot. Like things are really different now. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that congregations are hiring Jews by choice to be their clergy, and their ed directors and people like that. So that certainly makes a difference. But this study that he did, it was really interesting. And then he kind of suggested this idea of like rent a bubby, meaning that people who were becoming Jewish were not assimilated into the familial aspects of Jewish life, right? Because so you can study Shulchan Aruch, you can study the Siddur, you can study the Haggadah, all of these other things. You can know the mitzvahs in and out and upside down. You can learn all about Jewish history and follow all of the Instagram influencers in Israel life and blah, 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 blah. But like at the end of the day, you don't have those experiences that when people are asked, tell me a Jewish experience from your youth, they will say. They won't say, oh, when we sat down and studied Gemara. I mean, maybe there are certain families where that would be the first memory. Other memories would be mom lighting Shabbat candles or the smell of soup on the stove, things like that, right? So you don't get to have that when you convert. It's just not part of your story. So Mitch had the suggestion of like, you should get a bubby. Like you should be able to get this woman or a man or whoever who would do this for you. And I've talked about this rent a bubby idea before in other podcasts, but I wanted to throw it down here because again, it goes back to our frame of reference as people who convert to Judaism as far as what Jewish life is foundationally different than what it is for other people. And it's important that we recognize that. And that maybe what we do is we kind of find these people in the congregation who could teach us, like, how do you make matzo ball soup? Like, I know you can watch a YouTube video, but it's very different than when you say, I met with Mrs. So-and-so and I went to her house and we made soup, right? Like that's a different type of energy than, oh, I follow this like challah making influencer. Like, no, like maybe there's someone in your community that likes to bake, or someone who's been to Israel many times and has interesting stories to tell. Like really, I know that we have access to every human being in the world now, but we also have access to the people who are right next to us. And so something where we can encourage that, where we can encourage people to have Jewish experiences together that are transcendent of demographic and age and whatever, where if you're a person who is a Jew by choice, you can have that experience with someone and you can feel them as part of your new extended family. Now, speaking of family, Rebbitzin says that the new Mandalorian movie is awesome. I think it's awesome too. When we went to see it, it was just a great summer. It's just a good summer family movie. Like that's really what it is. And I know there's all these people who hate on it because what they really want is a bunch of Easter eggs of oh, this person, and then it ties into this episode, which then ties into some future plot. And Filoni and all of those people decided, nope, we're just making a blockbuster summer family Star Wars movie. And they did it. They did an amazing job. So Rebbitzin and I come home from that, and she said, the Jews, like the Mandalorians, are like the space Jew warriors. And I was like, well, how does that work? And so you could do a whole dissecting of it, because there's this idea of the walking of the two different paths. So one is sort of orthodox and the other is reform, I guess you might say. And then you have this idea of this is the way, and meaning this is the derech, this is the path. So there's some overlap with that. There's all of these different ritual ideas, things that you do and don't do, and taboos and whatever. So it's things like that where the Mandalorians, the way that they care about the children. There's this one, I'm not going to talk about the scene in the movie because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but there's this line that the Mandalorian says where he says, the old care for the young and the young care for the old. And it goes back to what I said earlier about we prioritize this whole sliding scale of age. Right? We don't think about income the same way. We think about age, and we think about place in life. And so the Mandalorian kind of taps into that with that line about the young care for the old and the old care for the young. So I kind of wanted to leave it on that because it's just another example of how there are all of these sort of cultural things that we don't think about Jewishly. And I could do 100 more episodes about this. And if you want that, let me know. I don't make things unless you tell me you want them. And I have some, data and things like that. So I'm going to figure it out. But otherwise, I'm just coming up with stuff off the top of my head. So if you want something, support something, let's make it happen, you and I. Want to become Jewish? In the last conversion episode, I explored the meaning of conversion in Kehillah and in sort of progressive Judaism overall. Everything from Jewish identity to practice, the Beit Din, the mikveh. Yeah, we talked about the snip part as well, but ultimately belonging, which is what I wanted this episode to be about. If you're interested, you can go back. It's the most popular episode we've ever done. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple. Hey, again, please support this podcast. We really need your help. It ain't going to keep going unless you make it go. Also, cool events coming up in June. Let's get into it. So we have a Pride Shabbat. Now, I know this is going to throw people off because, okay, here's the thing. So Pride Month is June, technically. On the calendar, that is what it is. Having said that, because we live in the South, even though people call it the Mid-Atlantic, it's still the South. We have the White House of the Confederacy. That means you're still the South. It gets a little hot in June and people pass out, and we don't want that in an outdoor festival. So what they do here in Virginia is they make September Pride Month, but that's really confusing because the JCC is going to celebrate Pride Month on Pride Month. So we're doing a Pride Shabbat service. This is June 12th. It's going to be at the JCC. So I was talking earlier about these Jewish institutions we don't teach you about in Derech Torah class. Come to the JCC and check it out. So this is a Pride Shabbat featuring us, members of Or Atid, and of course our friends at Next Gen. So this is just a Shabbat service. This is just a free thing. You can come, you can pray, you can meet these different kinds of people. Donation, of course, is always appreciated, definitely means a lot. However, you do not have to donate. Free. So please come Friday, June 12th. Now, as an aside, if you are a person in that sort of 25 to 45 range and you'd like to come to Next Gen's dinner, that's a separate event from us, you can RSVP, and there's a link on our website to their website where you can register. But understand two different things here, right? Pride Shabbat service with us, young adult dinner, I think probably across the hall. They don't have like different age dinners that night. That's not the concept. It just happens to overlap. We wanted to have a religious experience for people on June 12th, and they already had a dinner, so we just kind of put them back to back. So anyway, 6 o'clock, Pride Shabbat. Now, I already told you the thing about showing up late. This one, I kind of want you to show up early. Show up by 6 because we only have 45 minutes. So, let's do 45 minutes of prayer and have a spiritual experience together. So the next day, Shabbat learning and brunch at Second Arrow. So go to Church Hill. You know how that works. We're going to have a little brunch, and then we're going to pray, and we're going to learn, and it's going to be very yoga woo-woo vibes. Would love to have you at that. There are tickets for that. I think the tickets are $20 a person. And it's in honor of Shabbat, and our friends here at Second Arrow, and they're just, we love Second Arrow. There's going to be a little ad at the end of this about Second Arrow because they're terrific people. So I hope you'll come to those two things. We do have more events that are going to be coming up in July and in August, and then high holy days or high holidays, depending on what you want to call it, because it's really just about marketing. Friends, high holidays is going to be nuts. Like, it's going to be really, really cool. We are working on some stuff. I can't tell you yet because it's like you got to put ink on the paper. You got to pay the deposits. You got to do the, do the do. But it's gonna be freaking awesome. I cannot wait. So anyway, so you got to go to our website, check all of that stuff out. Coffee with the Rabbi. Now that's going on. That's going to go on basically that first 10 days in June leading up to our Pride Shabbat. So I'm going to have some free time. This is weird this year. Like normally summer is just insane. And I just will have wedding after wedding after wedding. For some reason, this year, it's all in May and October. Don't know why. It just landed that way. So that means I'm going to have a lot of free time for coffee with the rabbi. So just hit me up. Like, it's not, there's not like a special day. It's not like an event. I remember I'm going to have fun. Avi Calhoun, Peace With, that guy. So I remember Avi texted me and said, this is such a cool, like, program concept you have. So like, what is the registration for that? And I was like, you just text me and tell me you want to get coffee. Like, it's kind of low key. So we had a good time with that. Anyway, would love to have you with coffee. We can talk about whatever is on your mind. Most importantly, I want you to remember that you matter. Thanks so much. Our friends at Second Arrow now have another Instagram account, because here's the thing with Second Arrow. So you have Second Arrow as a physical therapy studio, as a coffee shop, all that. You also have the yoga component, and the yoga component is pretty incredible enough that maybe you need to have almost like a Second Arrow yoga identity, right? So you should definitely go on ahead and follow Second Arrow. You have the physical therapy and yoga clinic, but then you also have Second Arrow Yoga. So follow on Instagram, Second Arrow Yoga. I love the different classes they do. They have Hatha Yoga, Yin Yoga, Vinyasa, Ashtanga, all of these things that I absolutely know nothing about. But I love the fact that they do it. So definitely follow them. You can find the link here in the show notes. And of course, you should be following Second Arrow anyway. It's RVA's physical therapy, blending yoga organization, supporting long-lasting physical health in Church Hill. They do one-on-one evaluations. And of course, like I said, Second Arrow Yoga as well. Matter of fact, they have an event coming up, which is puppy therapy, which is kind of interesting. They do like some mommy and me stuff. They do coffee and walks. It's really great. So follow our friends at Second Arrow. Would really appreciate it.